Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad-gita as it is. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of ISKCON. Chapter 18, text number 6. Etanyapi tu karamani sangam tyaktva falani cha kartavyani time partha nischitam matamuttamam. Here in the purport, Prabhupada writes that everything that leads to Krishna consciousness must be encouraged, and that sacrifices meant for material advancement should be given up, but sacrifices that purify one and lead us to the spiritual plane should be continued. All of which points are very suitable for the appearance day of Lord Vamandev. Maybe you discussed that this morning in the class, the appearance of Lord Vamana? Did you discuss that?
Обсуждали вы?
You discussed that, did you?
Обсуждали это? Нет?
Yes. Discussed that, yeah. Because Bali Maharaj was engaged in a sacrifice that was meant for his material progress, not only of himself but of the whole position of all the demons. Bali Maharaj is known as Daitya Raj. He is king of the Daityas. Daitya means the descendants of Diti, who are a prominent branch of the demoniac sampradaya. Of course, Bali Maharaj, although born in a family of demons, he was a great devotee, as was seen when Vamandev came. Vamandev came to cheat him. It was his great good fortune that Bali Maharaj was cheated by Vamandev. Someone may think this is not very good. Certainly all the Daityas, apart from Bali Maharaj, they didn't think it was very good. His guru, Shukracharya, thought it was the biggest disaster to happen in his life. That Shukracharya, he's the guru of the demons. So you can understand what it means to be the guru of the demons. Guru of the demons means he's not going to lead you towards Krishna, he's going to lead you away from Krishna. So actually such a person is not a guru at all. Shatkarma nipano vipra mantra tantra visharadaha avaishnava guru nasyat vaishnava shvapacha guru. The Shastra says that even though one may be expert in all kinds of Brahminical activities, if he's not a Vaishnav, he cannot be a guru. But even if one is born in a family of dog-eaters, if he's a Vaishnav, he can be a guru, which is quite an amazing statement. If you go to India, sometimes even now you can see Brahmanas who are expert in all different kinds of mantras and so many different rituals, and they can quote from so many different shastras. Without looking at any book, they can chant mantras for hours, and they come from a very pure family. They can recite their family tree back many, many generations. And in their family, since the beginning of time, since the creation, since the time of Lord Brahma, in their family, none of them ever ate meat or drank wine or anything like this. And there are other people who eat dogs. You don't find many people who eat dogs, not in this part of the world anyway, I hope. But if you go to some places like Philippines, Korea, Thailand, you'll find people who eat anything. I lived in Bangkok for some time. I can tell you some pretty nasty stories. But I guess it's not so appropriate for Bhagavad-gita class. Bhagavad-gita class is not meant to make us vomit. Anyway, there are people who eat dogs, and worse than dogs. But Shastra says, someone who comes from such a background, if he's a Vaishnav, he can be a guru. So any person from any background can become a Vaishnav. Kirata, Hunandra, Pulinda, Pulkasha, Ambhira, Shumbha, Yavana, Kasadaya, Ye Necha Papa Yatapashraya Shraya, Shudhyanti Tasmai, Prabhavishnave Namaha. This is an important verse from Srimad Bhagavatam that Prabhupada quoted many times. It's very important for all of us, because it's a list of all the low-class peoples in the world, in which we all happen to fall into. Of course, I'm from Britain, and British tend to think the British are the best. and you're from Russia, and Russians think that Russians are the best. But according to the standard of the Shastra, anyone who is born outside of Bharatavarsha, they are known as mlechas. Means those who don't follow the Vedic principle. The list is there. Kiratahuna means Chinese and Germans and all Turks and Greeks, and they're all Papa Yoni. They're all sinful. But Shastra says that they can be reformed. They can become Vaishnavas by the grace of another Vaishnava. Now this verse is very interesting because it discusses the power of Lord Vishnu. That name is given Prabha Vishnu, which means powerful Vishnu.
No.
So this verse discusses why is Vishnu called powerful Vishnu. Of course, Vishnu, he creates, maintains and destroys all the material cosmos. Just by his thinking, he can create and destroy millions of universes. But this verse says that he is considered powerful because by the grace of his devotee, one who takes shelter not even directly of him, but of his devotee, even if he's Kirata, Hunandra, Pulinda, Pulkasha, even if he's the lowest of the low, worse than a dog eater, then he can become purified, he can become a Vaishnava. In other words, a more powerful activity than creating a universe is to create a Vaishnava from Kirata, Hunandra, Pulinda, Pulkasha. It's considered a more better example. It requires more power. Even sometimes a yogi, by mystic power, he can create a universe, or almost like that, can create a universe. In the Ramayana it is described how Vishvamitra Muni, he started to create new heavenly planets, new demigods. He wanted to send a Chandal to heaven to show his power. But all the demigods refused. Vishvamitra was pushing him up, and the demigods were pushing him down. So he got stuck in midair. Then Vishvamitra got fed up. He got disgusted. Yeah. So he said, all right, and he made his new heavenly planets, new demigods, new Indra, and he sent his disciple there. So of course, he had much mystic power. He had been doing austerities for tens of thousands of years. And he burned up all his power and he had to start all over again. But then, even though he had so much power, he couldn't make anyone a Vaishnava. Because it's a very difficult thing to make a Vaishnava. Vaishnava means completely purified consciousness. And people are eating dogs and eating meat and eating all kinds of horrible things. It means most contaminated consciousness. So this is a most amazing thing, how someone who is a from dog-eater family, he can be accepted as a guru if he's a Vaishnava. If it means whatever his background could have been completely horrible, but once one comes to devotional service, then he becomes completely purified. Whereas an expert Brahmana, he may be expert in so many mantras, but if he's not a devotee of Krishna, then he's not fit to be a guru. This was the position with Shukracharya, that he wanted to perform some sacrifice for increasing the prosperity of the Daityas. Now in every sacrifice, Lord Vishnu is worshipped. That is the only good thing about these karma kanda sacrifices. People perform these sacrifices for material gain. But at least there is some kind of worship of Lord Vishnu. That could be called perfunctory worship, if you know that word. Okay. Perfunctory, yes. Do you know that word? No. It means formal, as a formality, without love. At least there's some recognition of Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu's name is Yagyapati, means he's the master of the sacrifice. Okay. So Shukracharya was performing the sacrifice. That means he was teaching his disciple how to worship Lord Vishnu. And then when Lord Vishnu came and he wanted to take from Bali Maharaj, Shukracharya said no. So Bali Maharaj said, before you were teaching me to worship Vishnu, now Vishnu has come and you're telling me to give him up. So I give you up. You cannot give up your guru. It's a most sinful activity. If you accept a spiritual master, then that's it, fixed. But Bali Maharaj gave up his guru, and because of that he is celebrated as a Mahajana, a great personality. Now ordinarily that would seem to be a greatly sinful activity. But because it was meant for advancement of Krishna consciousness, then it could be done and it should be done. If your guru tells you not to surrender to Krishna, then he shouldn't be a guru. If out of mistake you accept someone as guru, then afterwards you realize that he's not a guru, he's not a teacher, he's a cheater, then you should give him up. That is stated in the Mahabharata. Guru api avaliptasya karya majanata utpanna pratipannasya parityago vidhiyate. This words are here. Guru api. Guru means who is most worshipable, who should be followed. And Guru api means even though he's a guru. Guru api avaliptasya means if he's not in Krishna consciousness. Karya majanata. He's not competent to tell us, to give us instruction. What should be done, what not should be done. Or utpanna pratipannasya. Previously he was very nicely situated, but now he's fallen away from that position. Then parityago vidhiyate. Then you must give him up. Not you may give him up. Parityago vidhiyate. Tyag means to give up. Parityag means completely give up. And vidhiyate means this is the rule that should be followed. Commenting, you may have seen this. This is Prabhupada quotes this in the section on Bali Maharaj. This verse. So commenting on this verse, Jiva Goswami says that to give up the person who is not a guru, the non-bona fide so-called guru, means should be given up for the sake of accepting the proper guru. So Bali Maharaj did that which could not be imagined. He gave up his guru, but for that he is glorified. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj, how did he become recognized as a Mahajana? There are 12 Mahajans. Who can say? Who are the 12 Mahajans? Brahma, Shiva, Narada, you got them all in order, okay. Kumara, next one. Kumara, Kapilo, Manu. Then Prahlada, Janaka, Bhishma. Then Bali Maharaj, Vyasaki means? No, Vyasaki means the son of Vyasa, means Shukadev Goswami. And Vayam, that means me. In this case is Yamaraj who is speaking this verse. So Prahlad Maharaj also became recognized as a Mahajana. What did he do? He was offering prayers to Nrsimhadev. While Nrsimhadev was engaged in the activity of ripping out the intestines of his father, Prahlad Maharaj was standing there with a garland, just waiting. When he's finished, I'll give him a garland. So is this a very nice thing? That someone comes and kills your father and you tell him, oh, thank you very much, that's very nice. Here's a garland. Of course, Nrsimhadev already had a garland. He didn't wait for Prahlad to give him a garland. He gave himself a nice garland of the intestines of Hiranyakashipu. In Krishna consciousness, we certainly learn everything about God. That idea of God being an old man sitting on a cloud, it's not such a good idea. God is a young blue boy with a flute. And sometimes he takes the form of Nrsimhadev and rips out the intestines of Hiranyakashipu. So don't say God is stereotyped. He is as he is. So many people may say, I think God is like this, I think God is like that. But we have information that God is like this. He has the head of a lion and the body of a man, and he rips demons to pieces. So you can believe it if you like. If you don't have to believe it. If you don't like to believe it, then you may also meet Nrsimhadev. Because for the demons, they meet God as death. And for the devotees, we meet God as Krishna, as Ram, also as Nrsimhadev. But we won't feel any fear to see Nrsimhadev. We'll be very happy. So Prahlad Maharaj, he became celebrated as a Mahajana. Sinful? Is it not sinful that you simply watch your father being killed? You don't protest, you don't call the police. But Prahlad Maharaj is accepted as a Mahajana for the great activity of rejecting his demoniac father and accepting the Supreme Personality of God. And Bali Maharaj became known as a Mahajana because he accepted to be cheated by Vamandev. Bali Maharaj had taken all the Daityas with him. He had conquered over the heavenly planets. All the demigods headed by Indra had to run away. Bali Maharaj was triumphant. Then Vishnu came He came to cheat him, he gave it all away. So the other Daityas headed by Shukracharya, they were completely disgusted. We went with you, Bali Maharaj. We risked our lives, fought with the demigods, we conquered, we put it all in your hands as the king, and this little boy comes along and you just give it all away to him. And now we've got to be just ordinary demons again. No more laughing at Indra. They were completely, in ISKCON English language we say fried. Probably better if you don't have a Russian word for that. Anyway, Bali Maharaj didn't care. His spiritual master cursed him. All the other demons, they also cursed him. They were fed up with him. Therefore, Bali Maharaj is famous for Atma Nivedanam, giving everything. In the 9 processes of devotional service, the 9th is Atma Nivedanam, surrendering everything to Krishna. Our aim is to surrender everything to Krishna. But it's not such an easy thing. Just like Bali Maharaj, he gave his whole kingdom. And if we have 100 rubles in our pocket, we wish that there was a 50 ruble note that we could put in the box and we could keep 50. Of course, we may give something, 5,000 rubles, 10,000 rubles. But if we are asked to give everything all at once without any preparation, could we do it? Even if we have nothing except a few pots and pans and a few clothes, we would be very reluctant to give everything.
Pots and...
Most people just have a few cooking pots in their house and maybe a TV. So if we had to give, we don't have much to give. Mostly people keep all kinds of rubbish things in their house. Actually, not so much in Russia, but especially in the West. They fill up their house with all kinds of useless things. They have money, they spend it. But anyway, we may have a few things, we don't want to give it up. Or even if we have to give it up, we have to think about it a lot. But Bali Maharaj, he didn't just have a few pots for cooking in his house. He was the king of the whole universe. And he didn't have any prior notice. He didn't have any warning. Bali Maharaj, Vamandev didn't come to him and say, well, I'd like you to give everything to me, think about it, and I'll come back in 1 week. He said, I'm just going to take 3 steps of land. And Shukracharya told him, wait a minute, he's going to cheat you, he's going to take everything away from you. Bali Maharaj thought, this is a Brahmana, maybe he's Vishnu. Yes, I'll give everything. Immediately he was ready. Therefore he is famous as a Mahajana. He was ready to give up everything immediately without any consideration for the sake of Krishna. This is the great example of Bali Maharaj. So we were supposed to talk about Vamandev, but actually we ended up talking more about Bali Maharaj. Because actually in this story, Bali Maharaj is glorified more. After all, Vamandev just came to cheat him. For him it was easier. But for Bali Maharaj, he had to be cheated and give up everything. So Krishna, he has so many pastimes. He likes to see his devotee glorified. Just like in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the great hero is Arjuna. There are so many heroes there. Bhishma, Drona, Ashvathama, Duryodhana, Bhima, Karna, Abhimanyu. But of all of them, Arjuna was the most glorious. He killed more than anybody. His character was most glorious. Krishna was there also, but Arjuna is remembered as the hero. Of course, everything was done by Krishna's grace. Arjuna was nimitta matram, the instrument only. But Krishna liked that Arjuna take the glory. Let him be glorified more. So just as we cannot think of Krishna without thinking of Arjuna, we cannot think of Krishna without thinking of Radharani. And at least for all of us, the fortunate members of ISKCON, we cannot think of Krishna without thinking of Prabhupada. So we cannot think of Vamandev without thinking of Bali Maharaj. All glories to Lord Vamandev. All glories to Bali Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Any question?
So, most of us.
No, that's not exactly correct. Neophyte, you want to translate what he said so far? No, ordinary members of the Varnashram system, they're supposed to follow all these processes. Neophyte devotees have to engage in the activities of devotional service, not only jnana and karma. Particularly, they will be attracted to worship the deity. But it is necessary for neophyte devotees to hear from pure devotees, so that their faith can increase and they can be elevated to a higher platform. Do you still have a question?
No, thank you.
What are you talking about? The regulated principles of devotional service? Translate. One thing I see that Prabhupada, he gave shelter to many of the most unlikely people. Many of the most unlikely non-candidates can tell many stories of many unusual devotees, which, looking back, they may seem to be quite amusing stories. But actually those devotees were struggling. So certainly Prabhupada gave the chance to everybody. If someone was willing to follow the regulated principles and chant Hare Krishna, and if they were not totally crazy and obnoxious, they were given a chance. There are not many people in this world who are willing to follow these principles. So anybody who is, they should certainly be encouraged to do so. And if they're actually sincere, then whatever their background is, they'll become purified. Question from the Maharaja?
Your Holiness, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that the cause of suffering and happiness, it's the self. It is in the self. What is the quality of this cause?
The quality of the cause. It's like saying, what is the cause of the cause? That is our own free will. If we want, we can choose to serve Krishna. If we want, we can choose not to serve Krishna. And if we choose not to serve Krishna, then we get involved in material, so-called happiness and distress. And if we exercise our choice properly, then we remain in Krishna consciousness. Another question? Alright, I'll take a question here because you already had a question. You can ask me tomorrow also.
I will translate by parts. In one of the purposes, Srila Prabhupada states that when we are advancing, we are forgetting the elevated position of Krishna, something like this. Yeah?
Yeah, well, you have to advance quite a lot. Don't start forgetting too soon. Huh? Don't start forgetting too soon. Yeah, then?
Невозможно служить Кришне, не служа. And in the material world, we can serve Krishna directly only through his representative spiritual master and our spiritual master. And can we speak about this in terms of our relationships with our spiritual master, that when we are advancing, we are forgetting his elevated position?
No.
Нет.
Don't take the spiritual master as an ordinary person. Acharyang mang vijanayan navamanyeta karhichit namartya buddhya suyeta sarvadeva mayoguru. Lord Krishna tells Uddhava in the Srimad Bhagavatam that the Acharya is non-different from me. He should never be disregarded in any manner. He should never be considered less than he actually is. He should never be disrespected. He should never be considered an ordinary mortal human being, for he is the representative of all the demigods. One more question. Okay.
Very often in the classes we hear about simplicity. What does it mean in this simplicity in Vaishnava philosophy?
Yeah, this is a very nice question. Simplicity means to have this simple faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I am His servant, and I have nothing else to do in my life but serve Him. It means not to be diverted to anything else, and not to be duplicitous, to deal with people in a kind of political way, to be very straightforward. Anyway, I could say more, but it's time for the arti. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Sri Sri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai.